Okay, so let's take a look at this real quick because this is interesting, right? YouTube will remove any new videos alleging Trump lost the election because of fraud. So we've seen on Chud Watch especially a huge influx of these videos from people like Tim Pool, people like Dave Rubin, people like Steven Crowder, people like Styx, who are all coming out here and pushing this unfounded narrative of voter fraud. Of course, there's been zero evidence of voter fraud. It's been smacked down in tons of courts. 40 lawsuits have been smacked down. The Supreme Court just denied to hear a thing from Pennsylvania. It's a whole nonsense bullshit grift at this point. These people are trying to make money off the narrative that Donald Trump won the election somehow. Anyway, YouTube's finally cracking down on that stuff, so let's take a look at this article about it. First, though, MMO addicted to 20 bits? Yeah, but that's... Oh, already read that one. Mitchell Drummer with 20 bits. Hannah, does John Doyle still have the election fraud video up? Can we report it and get it taken down because of the new rules? You probably could. I think his video is still up. I'm not gonna, you know, send you there to do that, but you probably could if you went to his channel. But... Anyway, continuing this. YouTube will remove any new videos alleging that President Donald Trump lost the U.S. 2020 election to Joseph Biden because of fraud or errors. Google's massive video site said Wednesday on its YouTube blog, essentially, YouTube now categorizes Biden's victory and Trump's loss as a historical fact, and so it will crack down on new misleading videos alleging otherwise. YouTube noted that its policies already prohibit videos alleging that fraud or errors changed the outcome of the historical U.S. presidential election, but, quote, in some cases, that has meant allowing controversial views on the outcome of process of counting votes of a current election, as election officials have worked to finalize counts. Now that enough states have certified the results to determine Biden as president-elect, YouTube will remove any piece of content uploaded Wednesday or afterward that misleads people by alleging that widespread fraud or errors changed the outcome of the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Any videos uploaded before Wednesday are going to remain up, even if they make the same claims that Trump lost and Biden won due to fraud or errors. So no, you couldn't get, like, John Doyle's video removed. Which is fine. I understand that policy. They're saying, moving forward, videos that are of this ilk will not be allowed on the site. Fine. The policy announcement from YouTube comes the day after the safe harbor deadline, when all challenges to an election at the state level are traditionally expected to be finished, a milestone that adds credence to the results of the election are beyond dispute. YouTube and social networks Facebook and Twitter have all wrestled with election misinformation in the U.S.'s highly contested election. The company's policies draw controversy not only for what they allow and what they remove, but also for the platform's ability or lack thereof to adequately enforce the rules they set. Google CEO Sundar Pichai, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, I'm not familiar, was hauled in front of Congress twice in the last 4 months ahead of the election, each time being upbraided for the perceived failures in YouTube leaves up and bias in what it takes down. This is an interesting concept, too, because we're talking about stuff like YouTube. The algorithm is tailored in such a way to keep people watching. They want people to be on the site as long as possible. They want them to be engaged in the content. And that same algorithm, like, we see this in the conspiracy theory videos that we've watched on Tinfoil Tuesday. That is partially a result, and I would argue, like, when Flat Earth got really popular, it's waning in its popularity. It was certainly a fad. But, like, when Flat Earth got really popular, that was a result of the YouTube algorithm doing what it does best, and that's delivering people content that is more of what they're already watching, but more extreme, right? Because if you get, like, people in on a little conspiracy theory, like, I don't know, a JFK conspiracy, or, I don't know, something silly, like Bigfoot videos or whatever, and then you keep going down that path of, like, more and more engaging content, and as it turns out, outrage and ridiculousness are engaging, you end up with a snowball that ends with people believing the Earth is flat, which then also leads to the sort of magical thinking that allows QAnon to fester as a political conspiracy theory that's damaging to the foundations of the confidence we have in our election processes. So it's interesting, and it is a problem YouTube and all the other social media sites need to address, because it's causing real problems. Did I miss a thing? Tucker White 94 20 bits. As funny as the MAGA Chud's hissy fit over this will be, I'm not a fan of YouTube doing this as a free speech absolutionist. or absolutist. YouTube shouldn't have the right to do this, especially given that sites like YouTube and Twitter are largely where much of public discourse happens at now. I'm not sure I agree with you. I would agree if they somehow enshrined in law and made sure that this was all handled equitably, right? If they said, okay, Twitter and YouTube, we have a new classification for you. You can be private businesses, but you're also public platforms, and you need to treat that as such. I would kind of understand. But also, they're private businesses, and they can kind of remove whatever they want. And until we change that in the law, which we could, like, that's certainly a discussion to have. Until then, this is what we have. And I also, free speech absolutist. I don't know if I agree that anyone's ever a free speech absolutist, right? Even in the United States, like, there are conditions under which free speech is limited. You can't commit fraud, right? If you, like, go out to someone and say, hey, you want to buy that bridge? I'll sell it to you, and you don't own the bridge. You can't do that. That's fraud. You're lying to that person to make money. You can't slander people or commit libel, right? You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. We already have restrictions on free speech. And I agree. I'm in favor of an unironic marketplace of ideas. But when you bring in, like, the how do I put this? The paradox of tolerance, in which if you allow intolerance to flourish, it will snuff out tolerance overall. How do you deal with that? And that's something I think you need to take into account when we're dealing with stuff like this. Like, if people are literally advocating for, like, sedition, basically, on the internet, is it not reasonable to remove these? Because people are not reasonable, right? Like, if people weren't able to be swayed by dangerous rhetoric, the Nazis would have never risen to power. I don't know. I think it's a complicated question, and I'm not saying I have a definite answer, but I also understand and believe that there are some times when you need to be like, no, we're not giving a platform to this stuff. The company also said it's changing its informational panel for the US presidential election results, which are fact-check boxes that show up at the top of some of YouTube search results and below some videos. Yeah, we see this, for instance, in Styx's videos when he talks about the election. The panel will continue to include a link to Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and explain that the states certify results after ensuring ballots are properly counted and correcting irregularities and errors. In addition, YouTube released some statistics about its enforcement and other actions so far related to the election. Those election results information panels showed up beneath more than 200,000 election-related videos, the company said, adding that the panels were shown more than 4.5 billion times since Election Day. Fact-check information panels show up over YouTube search results more than 200,000 times, including for voter fraud-related queries such as Dominion voting machines and Michigan recount. YouTube said it has terminated more than 8,000 channels and thousands of harmful and misleading election-related videos since September. It said that 77% of those removed videos were taken down before they hit 100 views. It says more than 70% of video recommendations on election-related topics directed people to news sources that YouTube deems authoritative. It said that top 10 authoritative news channels were recommended more than 14 times more than the top 10 non-authoritative channels on election-related material. Yeah, I don't know. I understand the concern. I really do, because I don't want YouTube to necessarily be the arbiter of what is okay or not okay. But it's a little bit like, what's the saying about pornography? I can't necessarily define it, but I know it when I see it, right? I can't define what is and is not something that deserves to not have a platform, but I know it when I see it. And actively undermining the democratic results of an election to try and undermine American democracy, that seems like it to me. But hey, I could be wrong. I'm sure my opinion on this will evolve as time goes on. But
about the tools of capitalism.
That's how I feel about it now. Thrash Mio with 20 bits. Where's everyone lining up to protest content creators being able to remove disabled comments like a lot of conspiracies and woo-woo videos do? Where does the free censorship wall line? Government, business, consumers? Right. That's what I'm saying too. Like on my channel, people leave like transphobic comments or comments that are I'm fine with comments that are, you know, just disagreeing with me. That's fine. But, like, if someone's, like, an asshole and they, like, you know, say, like, oh, you're ugly, you're fat, yada, 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 I remove those things because I don't think they're productive for the conversation. Right. Do I not have the right to do that because it's like, a platform that I'm using? Do I not have the right to do it because it's my channel? It's just... We're always trying to draw these lines in society, and it's hard to do, but... Hasula, thank you for following. YouTube already is the arbiter, though. Cat's out of the bag there. Yeah. And if we want to set up guidelines, if we want to set up guidelines that apply to every company like YouTube and every social media site evenly, I'm in favor of that, depending on what those rules are. Like, to ensure that people aren't being disenfranchised in some way to get their views out there. Because I understand, I agree, places like YouTube are a huge part of public discourse. They basically are the public square nowadays. Twitter and YouTube and Facebook and all these things. I understand that even though they're private entities, we all use them as if they're not, right? So I understand the need to have our laws evolve to represent that, but they don't right now. So until they do, this is the toolbox we have to try and stop dangerous shit, you know, hate speech, speech that points towards radicalizing people. Like, I don't know. So, let me know when they actually start, you know, writing laws that will be treated equally amongst all the platforms, and I will get on board, provided that it's reasonable. Until then, though, yeah, YouTube has to be the arbiter. What else are they going to do?